Okay, so there's also, by the way, on the bottom, so make sure your microphones are muted, please. Not everybody's microphone is muted, because that helps with reduce background noise, and it helps make sure that the audio, my audio, is nice and clear for everyone. On the bottom of your screen, you'll also see a word chat with a bubble on top of it. You can click on that if you want to ask a question. So it might be a little bit easier because I'm looking at the side, and there was already one thing that was put into that chat there. Thanks to Susan with seeing that this is like the Brady Bunch. Those of you who remember watching the Brady Bunch actually live as opposed to reruns as we do today, you know how the screen looks with the Brady Bunch. So we're a little bit more than that. We got 23 people on this call. So you can go to chat, and you can, the default is that the message goes to everyone. You could just make it go to me, and I'll still see the message there if you have a question or a comment to share. So I do want to say that it's great to see everyone. It is tragic that this virus has caused us to have to gather in this way. And it has prompted rabbis who haven't had social media training or technology training like myself back in the day in rabbinical school when I was ordained in 1989. The computer that I had floppy disks, and the only thing you could really do on the computer was word processing. So I thought, wow, this was great. I did my master's thesis on a computer where all the words on the screen were in green, and the only thing, and you had to put the floppy disk inside, and it had 8 megabytes of memory. So back in the day, so who could have thought that we as rabbis needed to be trained in Zoom and in Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all those things. So so we're doing our best here. It's great that we have this platform for everybody to see everybody else. So it's nice that it's good to see that everybody looks healthy, everybody looks well. You all look like you're holding up fine despite the virus. You have bright, cheery faces, and I just hope that that you stay that way, and that we're all here to help one another. The other thing is, and this is the topic for today. So last week we talked about the Torah portion of the week. I thought that because Pesach is coming, that we should start talking about Pesach. And today is Wednesday, and Pesach is 2 weeks from tonight. So please, everyone, not everybody is muted, and so great. So please, the more people who can be muted, the better. That would be appreciated. And again, go to the chat screen on the bottom, the chat button on the bottom to be able to type a message in. Okay, so Passover is 2 weeks from tonight. I don't need to say that again to get everybody, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? So we're in a position now that we haven't necessarily been in before, and that is to host a Seder that many of us might be on our own, especially those of a particular age range and above. It might be dangerous and certainly not safe for people to be in the same room together, who are usually in the same room together, that this year, because of the virus, it might not be safe to do so. I already know that my family from New York is planning not to come right now. That could change, but that's the idea that the New York members of my family, because they are the epicenter of the virus, are not going to be coming to our home. So that raises a question about having this very platform, Zoom, or some other video chat, like if you have an iPhone and you have FaceTime, to do FaceTime, to FaceTime in relatives who can't be at your at your table, to have them there virtually. So whether it's Zoom or whether it is the FaceTime or WhatsApp, also, if you don't have an iPhone, WhatsApp also has a video chatting mechanism as well. So I would highly recommend that. I just was in the Rita Rubenstein, without embarrassing her, just called me about an hour ago, half hour ago, to ask this very question about what she's going to do for Pesach this year, because her daughter, who is now Orthodox, is not comfortable with using electronics on Shabbat. Again, I don't mean to embarrass Rita by this, but I thought that this would be okay to just raise this very personal example as an example of what we're going to do. So now, apparently, 14 Sephardic rabbis came together in Israel. These are chief rabbis of municipalities throughout Israel who are well respected within the Sephardic community. They came together and said that it is for this year, for an emergency, for the need of the time, what the Hebrew is Sha'at HaDachak. So it's kind of a necessary thing for just this time. It's not something that we can now learn that we can do all the time because of Sha'at HaDachak, this emergency situation where elderly people might not be able to have a Seder, and it is a mitzvah to participate in the Seder, that it is okay to use live streaming or some other kind of platform like that to allow relatives in that way. So this is something unusual. I see your question, Fran, and I'll get there in a minute. This is something very unusual, necessary for the time. So I would highly urge all of you to consider using that kind of that kind of video conferencing format in order to call into your Seder. Now, before I get to Fran's question about Shabbat, people have been asking me about whether I can lead a community Seder in this way by Zoom. So the answer right now is no, only because I hope you understand that for me to do that means involving my family as well. And my family right now is not so comfortable knowing that they would be kind of on show in a live streaming kind of format, a Zoom kind of format. So what I am planning to do right now, and I had a Zoom meeting with Babette and with Milt. I'll answer your question in a moment. So I had a meeting with Babette, our education program director, our Chazan, Adina Ackerman, and our preschool director, Beth Adler, about what we can do together as a staff for our community. And what we agreed to is that I would record a kind of a model Seder ahead of time, that in which I will go through all the parts of the Seder with explanations. I will record it and send out that link that you can use if you want at your own Seder to help you, guide you through the Seder itself. So it's second best to a live Zoom of a Seder, but that's my plan right now. And we also plan to produce a lengthy resource sheet that hopefully I will have available to everyone next week. By next week at this time, hopefully that resource page will be available. That will have a number of Haggadah suggestions, arts and crafts projects that you can do at your Seder if you have young people at your Seder, and things like that. And also and Cantor Adina is going to be recording various parts, singing various parts of the Seder as well as bringing links to other recordings of other parts of the service so that you can have a more a broader, more experiential kind of Seder this year. So hopefully we'll have that available to everyone, and that will help. So now to the questions on the side. Fran asked, am I considering Zooming the service on Shabbat? So, you know, I absolutely see the need of how this format, just being able to look at your screen in this way and to see everybody in this way, that's very important. And when we're told by the governor that, so we're not on lockdown as New York is and California is, and we're waiting on word about whether the public schools are going to stay closed past this Friday. So we're not on lockdown, but our movements are being restricted. So unless we plan to be at the supermarket at the same time as our friends, we're not really seeing people that we know. And I understand completely that we are social animals and we need physical contact in order to stay healthy. And I firmly agree with, understand that. It's not just our mental health, but our physical health. The more that we are in isolation, not only does our mental health suffer, but our physical health suffers too. And that medical research certainly teaches that. So I understand the need for us to be together. I also understand the halachic ramifications of using this kind of format on Shabbat, and that as a conservative rabbi, halacha, Jewish law, is important to me in understanding how I understand religious, moral, and ethical values. And so that there is Shabbat is the holiest day of the week, and it should be treated as the holiest day of the week, in which we restrict activities that we normally do during the week that would lessen the holiness and sanctity of Shabbat. And so the use of electricity in this way is, my son just texted me that Governor Hogan apparently just had an announcement that people need to quarantine in place now in Maryland for 14 days. So I don't know, I haven't seen that, and I'm not available now to go offline to see if that's true. So if that's the case, then Pesach, 14 days from today, is the Seder. And so that means definitely we are quarantining in place. So my parents are on, and I'll talk to my parents separately about the impact of Governor Hogan's decision on this. So, okay, so Zooming on Shabbat. Doing this Zoom right now, I am doing a few things at the same time, which if you ask Lenore, she will tell you that I'm not good at that. So, and not to be sexist, but most men, I think, are not good at doing more than one thing at the same time. So running a service by Zoom would mean that I would have this computer screen on. I am making sure that everyone is muted, except for, because I've heard from other people when they do a service, even during the week, if people are unmuted, then the sounds just, when people are trying to sing, it sounds awful and it doesn't work. So everybody, I would have to make sure that everybody stays unmuted. I'd be playing around with the screen, and I think it would be taking away from the experience that we want to have of the service itself. Now, I could very well change that idea. People told me that they watched the live stream of the service last Shabbat. I know that 88 people watched over the course of that hour, and it filled that need, and it provided a sense of comfort and spirituality to Shabbat. And Friday night, when I was by myself in the sanctuary, 37 people were watching at some point over that time. So I know that, and that was easy for me to do. It felt very strange, but I see what you're saying, Fran, that you were watching Rabbi Stephen Abraham's service in Omaha. People had the chance to say hello to each other. Again, I'm not saying no forever. I'm just saying that right now, I don't feel comfortable doing it yet. If we're going to be in lockdown for a lengthier period of time, then my position most likely will change. But for the time being, I'm sticking with the live streaming format now, where everybody will be watching me as opposed to being able to see other people too. But again, that could change tomorrow, could change the next day, but I will let you know if we're going to change that in the future. So for Passover, Passover is different than Shabbat in that Passover comes once a year, Shabbat is every week. And the idea also behind Shabbat is that it's not absolutely necessary to be in community in order to pray on Shabbat. We can pray, we can fulfill our responsibility to pray and pray the Shabbat service without a minyan. So that's why rabbis are not so much in favor of Zooming Shabbat services as they are Zooming a Passover Seder. Passover comes once a year, and observing the Seder is one of the most important mitzvot that we can observe. Jewish social research on the Jewish community has shown that more than 80% of the Jewish community has some kind of Passover Seder. So not only is it popular, but it also is a mitzvah. And so in order to fulfill the mitzvah, that's why those Israeli Sephardic rabbis are willing to be lenient when it comes to a Seder, but they would not be lenient when it comes to Zooming a Shabbat service. So there is that difference. There's nothing about the Shabbat service, except for the Torah reading, that you can't do by yourself. And so to fulfill the mitzvah of hearing the Torah being read in public is not such an important mitzvah as it is to pray. And like I said, praying can be done by yourself without the need of a minyan. And Kaddish too can be recited with this alternative Kaddish prayer that we have. Barry, yes, what do you want to say?
Well, I was just going to say this has more to do probably with Passover. I recognize that, it's largely communal, and certainly we have, large seders with, up to sometimes up to 36 people. But this could also be an opportunity to sort of make it different. Rabbinically, rabbis say even if you're alone on Passover, you're still required to ask the 4 questions. But there are other ways to also make it a meaningful experience.
Right.
Reading the story. I mean, reading
Yes.
the actual story in Exodus from the beginning to the end, because we don't often realize all the implications of that. So there are other, instead of looking at this as a crisis, which of course it is.
No. So Barry, yes, I'm getting there. Yes. So right, I may sound like I'm doomsday, and I don't mean to sound doomsday, but there are plenty of options available to us. However, what I mean to point out from the rabbis is going through the 14 parts of the Seder is the mitzvah. So right. No matter how we do it, you can do it any. I don't know what just happened.
Screen went up.
Just a second.
Did you hit share screen?
No, I don't. how do I, there we go. Just one second, please, as I figure this out.
Oh, Rita Rubenstein, did you hit share screen?
Oh, yes, she did.
I don't.
Yeah. So Rita, please,
What should I do?
I need you to go to the bottom of your screen and undo that green button that says share screen.
It doesn't say. I don't have a green button on the.
There we go. Okay, never mind. I did it for you. I just
I
learned
don't
something new
see you
there.
now. You don't have to.
Okay, so you turned off your video. There you go. Now you have your hand raised over your picture, so you can. There you go. So now we're set. All right. So people who are going to be watching this video are going to be laughing at this point. So, all right. Now, back to Barry's question about this. I'm not saying how you have to do your Seder. I don't want to tell you how to do your Seder, and I want you to be able to do a Seder any way that you're comfortable doing, to whatever extent you want to do. All I meant to say about having the Seder and doing it by Zoom, the idea for the Sephardic rabbis in Israel is that the mitzvah is to go through the Haggadah. And like Barry said, the mitzvah is to do that even if you are all by yourself. You need to go through the entire Haggadah. What you add to that, how you make it more creative, that's up to you. Okay, so what I wanted to do for a little bit of the rest of the time, and we'll do this again next week as well. We'll continue the discussion about Passover, preparing for Passover, is first, I have a pile of Haggadot to my left, which I will show you one by one, about thinking ahead. If you don't normally host a Seder yourself, what you can use in your home. So this is the newest Haggadah that I've seen. It's from Tablet Magazine. Tablet Magazine is an online Jewish magazine, as opposed to getting something in the mail as a magazine like we used to. This is an online version of that. And some of you might get daily emails from Tablet about articles of Jewish content. It's not just about Israel, it's about everything, globally, spiritually, whatever. I highly recommend Tablet Magazine. It's a great format. They also publish a podcast called Unorthodox. I haven't listened to it, but I've heard very good things about it as well. So this is their Haggadah. They had a couple of weeks ago a deal to order 8 of them at once for a pretty good price. Now it's just for one copy on Amazon is, so if you go on Amazon to the Passover Haggadah Tablet Magazine, this will come up and it's $14. So $14.95. So what it is it's the traditional Haggadah with some illustrations inside and some readings, some nice modern readings as well. So if you're looking for a new Haggadah, I highly recommend this one. It had also charot. There are 2 things in the front of it. One of them could be very helpful at this time of year as we're dealing with this virus crisis. It has, just one second, let me get there. It had 10 cocktails, alcoholic beverages that you can make relating to the 10 plagues. Here, 10 deadly cocktails. So that's, so you have to laugh a little bit. Some of them might not be totally kosher for Passover, but the recipes are available for these drinks online. And then on the next page is 10 charoset recipes from around the world. And that has a link to go to, which I tried to go to yesterday, and it wasn't working. So, so there is, one of the recipes is from Suriname, South America. Some of you know that Lenore's grandfather, her mother's father, was born and raised in what was then Dutch Guyana, is now Suriname, because his family were Dutch. And so we haven't been to see there's a Jewish cemetery there in Suriname, etc. Bill, I see your question. I'll get there in a moment. So that's one example of charoset recipes. Bill Sumner had asked a question about will there be a service for the firstborn on Wednesday of the Seder? So Bill, what I was planning to do is to have the study session that I will be recording and doing live from here at the synagogue on Wednesday. So I will Zoom a study session, not the service, but the study session, and then I will Zoom right after that the burning of the chametz. I have all the lulavim and the other willow branches above my head on the top of my bookcase, waiting to use that as kindling for the burning of the chametz. So I would not recommend that you all come to the synagogue to bring your chametz. You can burn your chametz at home or flush it down the toilet. That would be both of those are reasonable ways of getting rid of your chametz when you search on Tuesday night this year. But know that I will be doing a burning of the chametz, and if you're pyromaniacs like I am, you'll see the big bonfire in the grill that I'll be doing on Wednesday. So yes, I'll be doing. So Haggadahs, other Haggadahs for families with young children. I'm getting there, Zella. So there's that Passover Haggadah. I grew up using this Haggadah. It was blue when we used them at home, but this was a more updated version of that. So that's the traditional Haggadah. It's from the same editor of the Silverman prayer book that we used to use, the black one that all conservative synagogues used to use. He also edited this Haggadah. So for those of you, mute your microphone, please, so we don't have to hear your phones ring. There's this also, I've taught sections of this Haggadah during services. It's called a Survivor's Haggadah. This was a reprint of the Haggadah that was produced in a DP camp in Munich in 1945. After the Holocaust, 1946, I think. So there was the first Passover after the Holocaust, after World War II was over. This is a remarkable edition of the Haggadah in terms of the prayers, the new prayers that they added, the creative prayers that they added to the Haggadah. It's published by, again, people mute your microphone, please. Actually, I'm going to mute everybody. So now everybody's muted. So if you have a question to ask, please type in the chat button. This is published by JPS, and I highly recommend this if you want something creative. Another creative modern Haggadah is this one it's called the New American Haggadah. It came out a few years ago, edited by Jonathan Safran Foer, with a new translation by Nathan Englander. So modern American Jewish authors who are involved in creating this Haggadah, which has beautiful inspirational readings too. I do want to point out two other things, and to Zella's idea about what family-friendly Haggadot, I will have resources. Beth Adler is going to put resources on that page that I'm going to send out to everybody next week. So if you can wait a little, there'll still be enough time after getting that to order that for your family. So there'll be suggestions there for family-friendly Haggadot. But in the meantime, go to PJ Library. PJ Libraries is great resources, Jewish resource for young families. PJ Library, just Google that, and they have plenty of resources there for what not only what to do at home every day with your little kids, but it'll also have holiday resources too. So PJ Library is the best resource I can say right now. If something more scholarly, if you want to know the kind of the history of the so I'm just reading a text on my phone. This is from Montgomery County Public Schools, that Montgomery County Public Schools are now closed until April 24th. Right, so that's the latest update that's from the State Superintendent of Schools. Schools are closed until April 24th. Okay, not a surprise. This is something called the Polychrome Historical Haggadah, which on the inside has the parts of the service in different colors, and each color represents a different period in Jewish history from when that part of the Haggadah was written and added to the Haggadah. So this is a fascinating kind of more scholarly edition of the Haggadah to use if you're interested to see how the Haggadah was developed. Also, I just happen to have on my shelf, and I have no idea how I got it. This is called the Ashkenazi Haggadah. It's an illuminated manuscript of the Haggadah. So you might want to, if you're interested, there are PDFs available online of like the Sarajevo Haggadah or other manuscripts like that. If you want to see beautiful colored illuminated manuscript of a Haggadah as you're doing your Seder, this is another resource too. So those are the Haggadah resources. Obviously, it's just funny that the Haggadah that I use at home, I forgot to bring in. I'm actually doing this recording from my shul office, and I just forgot to bring in. The Haggadah that I use is called A Different Night, and by the Hartman Institute, published by the Hartman Institute, so that's a great resource. Okay, so those are Haggadot. If you have any other questions about that, just type them in. Just go to the bottom of your screen, go to the chat button, and then you can type on the side. Okay. Shopping for Passover. So we had publicized, and it's now, I think today, if it wasn't yesterday, today is a deadline for ordering catered meals for Passover from any of the kosher places here in Washington. So that would have been the easiest thing to do in terms of this pressure now of knowing that you're going to be home by yourself for Passover. So the catered meal option goes away today. What's left is just buying food. There could be prepared food that Shalom's and Moti's normally has behind the counter, but you could probably do that for Passover. But if you want something more elaborate, today is probably the last day to do that. So what we're left with doing, if we haven't, there's one last thing. This was on a different side. The Hebrew College in Boston published this Passover Companion, which is free as a PDF. What it is for every section of the Seder is a very fascinating, beautiful, Susan is saying you can order from Shalom's through today. This is a beautiful companion to your Haggadah with beautiful readings for every single part of the Seder. So I would go online to see, just Google Hebrew College Passover Companion, and then you can get this PDF for these beautiful readings. Some of them are poems and other are just 2 pages. Yes, Paul. That's the different night. That's the Haggadah that I use. So take a look at Paul's screen, A Different Night. That's the Haggadah that I use in my home. Thank you, Paul. So those are the Haggadah companions. Back to food. So koshering our homes. This could probably take the last 20 minutes of our time together today, and I don't want to necessarily go through every little detail of that, but I just want to say that koshering for Passover is different than koshering for regular time of year, for the other 51 weeks of the year. Because to keep kosher is hard enough with having separate plates and utensils for meat and dairy. And to keep meat and dairy food separate, not to cook them in the same pots, etc., is hard enough to learn. But it's kashrut on steroids when it's for Passover, because if you make a mistake during the year with keeping kosher, the mistake, if it's a negligible mistake, and negligible meaning 1/60th of what you're cooking. So in other words, a drop of milk falls into your pot of chicken soup, you don't have to worry that you have now trafed not only your chicken soup, but the pot that it was cooking in, because the drop of milk is much less in volume than 1/60th of the chicken soup. So mistakes are allowed to be made, not intentionally, because then if it's intentional, it's not a mistake. You can't intentionally be treif when you're trying to keep a kosher home. But if you make a mistake, it's okay. The rabbis built in, because mistakes happen. For Passover, mistakes are not allowed. So if a drop of chametz fell into your pot of your kosher for Passover pot, in which you're cooking kosher for Passover chicken soup, a drop of chametz trafes up that chicken soup and makes it non-kosher for Passover. So the kashrut rules for Passover are that much more stringent and that much more difficult. And for many people, they find it much easier to close up their kitchen and go someplace else for Passover. And I don't blame them, because of the pressure that's involved in making a kosher home. The options available to us to go away are not available anymore. We're not allowed to travel, let alone think about going to a kosher for Passover resort at the Hyatt in Cambridge, Maryland. That used to, I think they had a kosher for Passover place, or someplace in Deep Creek Lake, or even further than that. It's just not safe for us to do, and all those places are closed. So that means that we have to make Passover in our homes. So it is going to be a challenge. If we want to do this as carefully as possible, then that means cleaning thoroughly our kitchens and coming up with a system. So let me, just thinking off the top of my head here, how to make this as easy and as doable for you as possible. The utmost easiest way to do this is to close your kitchen and just do everything from a package. And on disposable paperware, plasticware. That's the absolute easiest thing to do. So I see Fran making a face. I'm not suggesting that you do this. I'm saying for the easiest thing to do is to close your kitchen. What that is, clean your house as you would normally clean your house, and maybe a little bit more carefully to make sure that there's no chametz, no breadcrumbs around, no other kind of food crumbs around. That's the kind of cleaning that we're going to have to do. That's the kind of cleaning that you have to do in your home to try to clean our house of the chametz. Okay, so we clean our house of the chametz. If we want to use our kitchen, then there's extra cleaning that's involved in order to use your kitchen. So there are the countertops. If you want to put anything down on the countertop, any kosher for Passover food on your kitchen countertop, that means extra cleaning has to be done of your kitchen countertop. And if you don't want to do that, then that's why I'm saying that you need to have a different room. Put the food down on a table outside of your kitchen, because the kitchen requires extra cleaning in order to use it. So to clean a countertop involves, let's say you have a granite countertop, okay, because that's the easiest to clean. If you have a granite countertop, all you need to do is clean it and then pour very hot water on it, okay, which kind of koshers the countertop after you've cleaned it. So clean the countertop as you normally do, then pour hot water on it. This is what I do. I take a clean dish towel. I put it under my Instant Hot, right? So I have an Instant Hot on my sink where I can make a cup of tea or coffee that way. You take your Instant Hot, you put a clean dish towel to collect the hot water from that, and then wipe your countertops with that hot water dish rag. And that koshers your kitchen counter. So you can use the kitchen counter. Now, if you want to use more in your kitchen, instead of disposable paperware, plasticware, if you want to use silverware, you could, and you don't have kosher for Passover designated silverware, you could kosher your silverware. You take a pot, fill it with water, have it boil so that the water is running, boiling, and insert silverware one at a time, all metal silverware. Silverware that has any kind of attachment to it, wood, plastic handle on it. You can't do it this way. It's only all metal, completely one solid piece of metal, fork, spoon, knife, utensil, can put into this pot of running, boiling water, and make sure the water is still boiling and running as you put the utensil in. So you want to have a full pot of water for one knife to go in so that the water keeps on boiling. You add your utensils one at a time to that pot of boiling water, and that's how you kosher your silverware, okay? Most people I know don't do this. Most people have designated separate silverware for Passover. But if you don't, because you've never had to do it before, this is what you do. The pot of water does not have to be a kosher for Passover pot. It just can be any regular pot can be filled with water. If you want to make that pot kosher for Passover, then you want to make sure that the water boils over the pot. If the water boils over the pot, then the pot becomes kosher for Passover. The contents of the pot that you insert one at a time will become kosher for Passover if it's all metal. So that's how you kosher your silverware. So you see that this process of having Passover at home to a degree that it is kosher for Passover is a difficult, lengthy, time-consuming process. So again, the easiest is take out kosher for Passover from Motis and Shaloms, not in your kitchen, put it on a table and eat elsewhere in the house and just keep your kitchen closed. The next step is how to kosher your counter. The next step is how to kosher the silverware. There's also the refrigerator. Koshering the refrigerator is pretty easy. You just clean the shelves and make sure that any food in the refrigerator is in a container. So in other words, if you have cream cheese or butter that you have taken out of its wrapping and have it on the shelf, don't do that for Passover. You want to take all of that out, put it in a container. If it's in a container, then you can keep it in your fridge. It's not ideal, but you can keep it in your fridge in a part of the fridge separate from where your Passover, kosher for Passover food is. So package everything up and then clean the shelves thoroughly of any kind of food stains that might be on the shelves. Once the shelves are clean, then it's kosher for Passover. That's pretty easy. Same thing with your freezer, the same thing. If you have lots of food in there, make sure it's all packaged up. And if it's all packaged up, then your Passover packaged stuff can stay in the same freezer, same refrigerator. Now, if you want to cook your own food, this is the hardest process of all. So koshering your silverware, well, it's probably equal to koshering silverware. Glassware, by the way, before I get to the oven and the stove. Glassware is easy to kosher. So I'm pretty lenient when it comes to this. Glassware, for the rabbis, it's all about whether the material is porous or not. If it is porous, like earthenware, you can't kosher that for Passover. But metalware, because it's not porous, all you have to do is clean it and then boil it. Glass doesn't even have to be boiled. It is so not I'm not talking about Corningware or Pyrex. I'm talking about pure glass. Pure glassware, all you have to do is clean it and rinse it. And then it's kosher for Passover. So that's the easiest thing. If you have glass dishes and glass, you don't have glass utensils. I've never heard of that. But if you have glass dishes and glasses to drink from, all you have to do is clean them and rinse them, and you're good to go. Some people said you need to soak them. I don't require that. That's easy. All you have to do is clean it and rinse it, and you're good to go. It's good for Passover. How do you kosher a non-granite countertop? Thank you, Susan. When we talk about granite tops, clean them, but then you have to cover them with some other material. Like if you have a formica or some other material. If it's a stainless steel, like a commercial kitchen countertop, you can do it the same way as granite. All right, clean it and then put the boiling water on it. But if it's not granite or not stainless steel, if it's formica or some other material, you have to clean it and then cover it with something else. So that keeps the Passover food from mingling with any kind of chametz that might be left on the countertop. So glass dish. If you have glass dishes, then you can use them for Passover. Just clean them and rinse them, and keep them separate from any chametz dishes, but you're good to go for Passover. Utensils, boiling water. Now, the refrigerator and freezer, I said. Stovetop and stove and oven. Most ovens today have a self-cleaning mode, okay? So what you need to do is thoroughly clean the racks in the oven first. Thoroughly clean the racks with like Brillo pad or something like that. And then run your oven on a self-cleaning mode. And then all the ashes that are in there, whatever's left in there, just clean away and your oven is good to go for Passover. Okay? So that's all you need. You have to make sure that the racks are clean first. Don't just rely on the racks being clean in a self-cleaning oven. Make sure that you clean the racks thoroughly first. And once you do that, then you can leave them in the oven on a self-cleaning mode cycle, do the self-cleaning mode, and your oven is kosher for Passover. The idea behind for the kosher for Passover is food is considered food if a dog will eat it. If a dog won't eat it, then it's not considered food. So anything that gets burnt to the crisp in an oven that is on self-cleaning mode, then that is not considered food anymore. And those ashes are totally fine to leave after you clean out, then your oven is good to go for Passover. If you don't have a self-cleaning oven, then I'm really sorry. This means a lot harder work because you not only need to clean it well with the Brillo pad, but you probably have to do that easy off spray thing. And you have to make sure that there are no stains or anything left, because if you don't have self-cleaning, then the highest temperature your oven goes is not high enough to actually clean the oven. Your oven, when it's in self-cleaning mode, goes to a higher temperature than it ever goes, than you can set it to go. And so that's why self-cleaning can clean your oven for you. A stovetop, if you have a gas burner, like I do, if you have a gas burner, then what you need is to clean the grills around the burner, clean them thoroughly with a Brillo pad, and then turn the flames on to the highest it goes and leave it on for 10 to 15 minutes. And that koshers your stovetop. So you clean everything around the stovetop, the gas burners, clean it thoroughly with a Brillo pad or whatever like that. And then, and the grills themselves that you put the pot on, you clean that thoroughly as well, then leave the flame on for 10 to 15 minutes. Electric stove, that is the old-fashioned kind of electric stove with the spiral thing. You have to clean that thoroughly as well, the same way, and leave those burners on, those electric burners on to the highest temperature for 10 to 15 minutes. If you have the smooth top kind of stove top, the more modern kind of glass top or ceramic kind of stove top, there is a way to kosher that. And I have something called the Pesach Guide from my rabbinical assembly. Email me privately for that, and I could send you the page that describes how to do that, because it's a tricky kind of process without breaking your stovetop to how to kosher it for Passover. Microwaves are easier to kosher. If you have a rack in your microwave, you have to clean that with the Brillo pad. If you have a dish, a glass dish in it, that clean that thoroughly. Again, it's glass, so it's good. Clean everything inside thoroughly of your microwave. Once it's all clean, put it all back inside. Then take a styrofoam or some other kind of cup like that, fill it, or halfway fill it with water, and put it on for 5 minutes in your microwave. Put that cup half filled with water in your microwave, turn it on high for 5 minutes. You'll notice steam will come out of that cup. That's okay. It won't break your microwave. That's how your microwave becomes kosher for Passover. Okay, so this is going to be recorded, and this is recorded, so you can run through all of these steps again for how to kosher your house for Passover. Again, these are the koshering ways. I'm not telling you that you need to do this in your home, but if you're worried or stressed about how you're going to make Passover for the first time, that these are the steps that you have to go through for that. One last thing about koshering is the dishwasher. Dishwasher is also, I'm lenient about this as well. There are some Orthodox rabbis who say that you need to buy new racks for your dishwasher. I don't say that you need to do that. All I say to do is that you need to put your soap in the dishwasher and leave the dishwasher empty. Run your dishwasher with the dishwasher soap on a full cycle, empty. Run it full like that, then your dishwasher is kosher for Passover. And you can put your glass dishes, any dishes in your dishwasher. That's how the dishwasher becomes kosher for Passover. So we did countertops, we did refrigerator, freezer, we did oven, we did stove, we did utensils, and we did dishwasher. If there's any other questions about that, type them in now. And we'll go through, by next Wednesday, I hope, to have the link to the model Seder that will have recorded by then. I will also have the resource page from our staff about how to enhance your Passover holiday. And then I'll kind of highlight some things from that in what we'll do next Wednesday at this time. So last chance for you to type your questions in on the side. In the meantime, I just want to thank everyone for being here today. I hope and pray that we all stay healthy. And I'm going to unmute us so we can all say goodbye to one another. Okay, so take care, everybody. Be well, and I'll see you online soon.
Hi, everybody. Miss you.
Bye-bye.
Well,
Thank you.
Bye.
Stay healthy. Bye.
Everybody.
see you.
See everybody.